Alright, in this episode, we talk about a weak upper body
and effective arm care.
Stephen Godani here at the @TopVelocity hashtag Pitch and Tips show, where you go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @TopVelocity hashtag Pitch and Tips. You ask your question, we answer on the show. You could go to the DA53. Was that your number, like your first number?
53 was with the Mariners. I was 53, and they always call me the DA because they call it the DA close of the case. So
yeah, and you had, what was your closeout song or your come-out song?
Ladies and Gentlemen by Saliva.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Nice. Okay.
And they had like kind of like those like
they like turn off the lights on the stadium,
yeah,
and then it'd start like spot down coming in, and then
you can actually search it on YouTube, him coming out with the Mariners.
There's not a good video of it, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they use kind of like those grunge looking letters.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. Nice. The DA53, Stephen Godani. Oh, it's at Stephen Godani, right?
Yeah.
All right. Ask your question, we're gonna answer on the show. And if you haven't already, go to topvelocity.net, check out all our programs. We are going to take the question for today. What's the question for today? Nate Butler asks, a lot of people say velocity comes from other things than the arm, but what if it just feels as if it's weak? Good question, Nate. You know, baseball conventionally would, for years, up to probably 20 years ago, said that velocity came from the arm. Everything came from the arm. As you know, science has come out, and if you look at case studies post-2000, I mean, they just exploded on the scene. Before that, there really wasn't much. I mean, you can go back and look at a pitching case study from 1960 to 2000, or let's say 1960 to 1990, and there was probably like 5 of them. And now there's like 5,000 of them. But when those case studies came out, then it was like, okay, ground reaction forces, you know that's the same thing. That's so that we build force up the body, so the legs, all of a sudden now, wow, the legs are so key in generating velocity. And that's when these things started, our coaches started understanding it more. And still, you know, a lot of coaches still in the dark, they still think the arm. But that's a good question. And I'm just I'll give my answer, Dave will give his answer, Stephen will give his answer. Of course, there is a point where we do get to the arm, but I like to do that last. And initially, you're right. If I've got legs that can generate 100 miles an hour and I've got an arm that can only handle about 80 miles per hour of torque, then I've got a problem, and that could cause an injury, and I believe it will cause an injury. So we have to it's got to be a total body approach to power development, and the ability for every joint to handle the torques of 90 miles per hour. And of course, as the torques move up, they actually get a little bit more aggressive as they go into the shoulder and elbow. So yeah, the shoulder and elbow have to be able to handle that. But I'm not going to just do like Steel Conventional Wisdom does and just do a tubing program or a whatever arm strengthening program and not neglect the legs and the core and all the other important aspects of it. But I am, once I build the legs and core, yeah, I'm going to go into a shoulder integrity program, really good grip strength. We get crazy with grip strength. I'm going to hit the biceps and tris, even though a lot of our pushing and pulling, which we do at heavy loads, really hits that well. But yeah, of course, I'm going to make a big emphasis on it. But that's after I've really built it from the ground up, built the legs, built the core. But if you go look at that picture I put on my Twitter page with Chapman, I mean, Chapman has got guns. Not to say that that's why he throws hard, but it is in a way protecting his arm as long as it's functional. What do you think, David?
I think it's a great question because a lot of people deal with this. A lot of people deal with arms that just kind of feel dead. Every year in my process, I deal with it just a little bit because when you start adding more load to your arm, and by that I mean when you start actually pitching in games with the stresses, with trying to throw harder than you're normally throwing in your bullpens or leading up to your season, you deal with a little of your arm stepping back. It's called a dead arm. It always happens in spring training, usually just a little bit. A lot of guys happen, in July or August because just the season wears on, and you get over it because your arm actually builds back into that. It takes that. And
do you really think dead arm is a good thing? Do you think dead arm is the legs? It's the question. Do you think it's the legs that are slowing down, or is it really the arm that's slowing down in dead arm? What do you think?
For me, I think it's the arm's reaction to the stresses you're putting on your body and taking that load, and because when you get a hitter in there, you're going to push it just a little bit harder.
Okay.
And that's just it's a reaction, but you can't step back and freak out about it. You got to understand, it's just like when you're lifting and you go for that big day and you start hitting PRs left and right. 3 days later, you're going to feel sore.
Yeah.
It's just same thing.
So
That day, you're jumping on the mat.
So it's probably it's probably just like lifting. It's probably just crushing the central nervous system and basically the motor units in the arm muscles, because there's so much eccentric loading there.
Yeah.
Because eccentric loading crushes the central nervous system. It crushes the muscle. The ability to recover from an concentric to an eccentric phase is so much higher with an eccentric loading. So I believe it is the same effect as when you lift heavy and hard, as when you've been throwing a lot. Your body's just not recovering well.
It's just not recovering. I mean, you're exploding with your legs. You're doing everything a little bit harder. You're probably stretching out just a little bit more. It's taking more force, and it's the body's reaction. So by lifting, by keeping your arm healthy, by doing all your normal exercises and then lifting heavy along with it to help the bigger muscles, you're putting it in a position to bounce back, to come back from it. Also, last year, or 2 years ago, so 2014, I had a lot of arm weakness, a ton of arm weakness. And it's the first time my career I'd ever felt that, but also that year, I was rotating a lot more than I've ever rotated in my life.
You weren't using your legs.
I wasn't using my legs at all. So this whole arm was just taking the load, moving more like this than it ever has, and it hurts even just to do that. And
Thank you.
so when I'm throwing like this, it's taking more of the load versus actually building up, getting all of that forces going and letting it actually just release and not actually put all that stress on the arm. I was feeling way more soreness, way weak. I felt weak in my arm, and it was the first time I'd ever had that feeling. This year, with the whole season going through Brent's program during the off season, during the season, I never felt weak in my arm once. Other than when I threw about 4 days in a row, and if I don't feel weak then you're just superhuman. But and then one day and I'm bounced back, because that's what you do when you're prepared. That's what you do when you're ready.
Yeah, and so I see like your arm from 2014 was trying to do more of the work of generating velocity than last year, because you had to brought your legs back.
There's no question. When your arm's doing more of the work, it's just like going to the gym and lifting more arms, and constantly doing it. You're going to have those reactions.
So, because if you watching the show when David's on, I feel it. I'm giving you a big off-season perspective because I'm not the player anymore. He's the player at the big league level. He always gives you that in-season approach. So kind of talk about a good in-season approach, because you have a lot of kids out there who've just been told tubing, lightweight, shoulder routine. It's like arm strengthening, arms. I mean, how far do we go? And how do we balance all this out? Do you think that's a good idea for them to be putting all these reps all year long to keep the arm strong? Is that really effective?
And long toss too. They'll be like long toss. That'll strengthen your arm.
Right. So how far do you go in season in keeping your arm strong? Is it still part of the total body approach, and what do you think of these guys that just want to do all these upper body stuff?
I think you have to find the perfect medium there. You can't sit out there and go long toss and then expect to be able to pitch in the game and actually have anything really behind on the ball. You're putting a workout on your arm, and then you're going to go pitch and put a workout on your arm. I think it's key to get with either your trainer or whoever you're working with and have a really good arm program for after games. Get it back strong every single day, but be smart. Don't go out there and if you've been killing it for a couple days, take a day off. Let it recover, just like you would in a lift. During my season, I wasn't really doing too much overhead. Wasn't doing too many of the overhead lifts, just because I pitch a ton, and that's what I try to make my career on, is pitching every single day. And when I'm throwing, I'm doing already a ton of work overhead. So I take a lot of that out, but I still was doing push-ups every 3 days, every 2 days, 3 days. I was doing other arm care, a lot of back stuff. I wasn't scared to do that. I just brought down the workload a little bit, because my workload pitching exploded and is going higher. I need to be ready 4 or 5 days in a row. And if I'm doing constant lifting and killing it, I'm just not gonna be able to deal with that. Now, when the off season happens, now it's like time to get it, build that strength, build that core strength in your arm and your upper body. So during the season, you don't have to keep killing it because the throwing is going to do that for you.
I mean, do you feel like, though, I feel like guys over rep in season with arm care work?
Yeah, I think guys can do that a lot. Guys can absolutely over rep on arm care work. You have to be smart about it. You got to understand your job number one is to be ready every single day to pitch. That's your job number one. You can do a ton of arm rep stuff, but if I'm seeing a reaction in the game, I don't like it. I like doing all my arm stuff after the games because I'm ready for the game. That's my number one priority. The second the game's over with, I can kill it. I can get all my arm care stuff in, and then that gives me the most time I can have to recover. Because at the same time, all the little reps and everything is tearing your muscles just a little bit each time, and it has to recover, and you need that time to recover. I
mean, and I feel this also as well is that really in what helps strengthen my arm, specifically in season, what really helps it bounce back, I like more of those post-game leg days and how that actually helps me bounce back. As much as, I believe too, if I'm throwing 100 throws, I like to probably put, maybe close to those. I would say I wouldn't want to do 100 reps, but I would still want to put back in a concentric movement into those muscles that would have been decelerating and eccentrically stretching. I'd like to concentrically load them back, but not obsessively, but enough to feel the arm is strong. But I really believe that the leg post-game training, the leg work, is going to be more effective in the recovery. What do you feel?
Absolutely. I think the leg work is a huge part of it. In the big leagues, we're fortunate. We have trainers that are arm care specialists that are there to design to keep you ready every single day. And we had a routine. Every day I'd get done with the game, we'd sit down, and we'd kill it. We'd be constantly, you'd be doing manuals, we call them manuals, so he'd be physically holding my arm and giving me resistance. It's the same thing as going in the gym and working on it. And
so how many kind of reps, what were the rep loads like?
It would change. Some days would be where we would have more resistance based, some days it'd be more push based. A little bit different. Just it's like, hey, 5 seconds.
How long was the whole routine?
It would be probably a good 20-minute routine.
Okay.
But we would kill it. We would get it. But then it was a good communication of like, hey, David, you threw a lot of pitches today. You threw the day before. You warmed up the day before that. Let's take it really easy today. Let's just get it moving and then get a good stretch. Let's make sure there's no issues there. Because if you hit one of your training, one of your normal little workouts that you're doing with them, and there's a weakness, now we know, hey, all right, the pitching's taking a toll, let's rest it. But you don't want to always be in this rehab mindset. You want to push it too. And push it with your arm care, but be smart, man. If you're throwing a lot, step back. If you're not throwing a lot, start moving it forward, because you need to get your arm in that mode.
Yeah, and then too, as well as, things you can test on your own is test your own external rotation strength, the ability to pull the arm back, which is really what, if we start getting weakness there, we're going to lead to injury. Like for me, I would take like a 3-pound dumbbell, and if I felt considerably weaker over here, it said, okay, I need to do a better job in helping recovery. I definitely don't want to go pitch a game with this arm feeling considerably weaker than this arm. I want to feel that integrity, that balance. What would you do as far as if you woke up and you had a pitch that day and this thing was considerably weak? That's something you'd want to talk to the coach and say, look, maybe I shouldn't be throwing today, or what?
That's something you absolutely want to address. You want to make sure that you're prepared. Or obviously, if something's going on with that, you're probably feeling in other ways. You're probably pretty sore. If I'm the big leagues, it's a little different. There's a fine line there and telling them that you're that sore, you can't pitch, because your job is to pitch and you're getting paid a lot of money to do so. So you got to be smart with it. Maybe tell the coach, like, hey man, I'm just a little tired today, or hey, I feel fine, but I wouldn't mind a day off if it works. You got to be really smart about it. But a lot of times, man, you got to tough through it. But now, if you're in high school, you're in college, be smart about it. Don't risk your body, because there's a lot more pitches. You need to put yourself in the position to be in the big leagues to take the ball every day. because I don't have the room to complain about it because this is what I'm supposed to do. If you're in college or high school and you're hoping to get there, you're not going to get there by taking that bow every day when you're sore, taking that bow every day when you can't really even lift it up. Those are the days you have to recover, and you have to put your career, hopefully your future major league career, in your hands and say, hey man, I need a day. Once you're already there, that's the whole point of pushing, of getting there. So I don't have the luxury necessarily to sit there and be like, I really need a day off, because you don't want to be that guy in the major league level that always needs a day off. The second you're sore, you can't pitch through it. But Be smart in high school, be smart in college, be smart with your coaches, tell them if your arm's bothering you, and then take that rest because you're young, you got your career ahead of you. Don't risk it. I have to risk it every time.
Yeah, and at the same time too, look more into just the rotator cuff. I think when a lot of guys think of arm, how to keep my arm strong, they strictly think the rotator cuff. Yeah, that is a big part of it. The rotator cuff are little bitty muscles that really can't handle a lot of loads, and they have everything to do with these movements here, internal, external rotation. But to keep the scap protected is the traps, the rhomboids, the serratus muscles. There's the lats. The point is build all those big muscles too, because those are going to support all the deceleration.
So a lot of the guys I know that actually have shoulder issues, it didn't start rotator cuff. It started the other muscles because the other muscles were deficient, or they caused the issue that pulled on the tiny muscle. So, the ligament had an issue because the other muscle wasn't supporting it. Yeah. You have to support everything around it, and that's what I love about the Top Velocity program, because it really got into all of it, and it's basically a giant blanket coverage, and we're pushing every single one of them, along with doing a normal little arm care program to make sure the little muscles are good. We're being smart about the little muscles, and then we're saying everything else around it, let's kill it and get those as strong as possible. And mobility. So it's allowing you to take all those loads and be as strong as possible, which is the perfect combination.
Yeah, and a good way to look at it is the little muscles start the movements and the big muscles power the movements. So all the torques and the forces, those big muscles are really going to be the ones helping it. So if you have a weak pull-up, you have a weak row, what do you think your rotator cuff is going to have to do when you're throwing 90 miles per hour? It's going to have to be more involved. So you're going to be the guy who doesn't bounce back as quick because your small muscles are having to take more of the loads. You're going to be the guy who has a better chance of probably falling into injury. If you look at someone like David, he's got big, strong back. He's got strong hips, posterior chain. The point is I can see a lot of strong decelerators in the big muscles. So the point is, if you can get those really strong, I guarantee you, if you look at someone like David, who they call him, they called him Everyday David this year because the guy would just nonstop everyday pitching. I think it's really credited to the fact that he has some really powerful decelerators in his body, and that's more than just arm carry, right?
Absolutely. And when I'm sitting in a major league locker room and I'm seeing these guys like Noah Syndergaard, seeing a Harvey, I'm seeing Shelby Miller down in Atlanta this year. These guys that are on the upper echelon of major league pitching, and everyone wants to just look at them and go, oh, they're freaks. They're just genetics. Everything's perfect. We were talking about this right before we got on. And you see it, yes, they are bigger, they are stronger, but then you watch them in the gym, and they are doing bigger, heavier lifts than everybody else. Shelby Miller's not sitting between starts and sitting back and doing just a little tubing program and sitting here going, okay, cool, I'm good. No, he's in the gym killing it, and he put more weight on than anybody else on that team, and he's our all-star. And so you go, wait, there's probably a combination here. He's throwing up weight, and it's impressive. Noah Syndergaard's throwing up a weight that's just ridiculous.
Do you know if is Harvey a lifter?
Harvey gets in there and works, man.
Yeah.
He puts up weight. All these guys do. All these guys that are becoming more and more successful at a younger age are putting weight on their body mid-season, especially between starts. They're not being really gentle with their bodies. They're pushing their bodies to the limit, and then you watch them in the game, and you see the success. And you see this whole new generation just exploding, and then you see them in the
exploding.
And ball speed just exploding,
yeah.
And you see them in the weight room doing the lifts that they're not supposed to be doing. And it's impressive, and you see it, and you actually see the science behind it, and what Brent here talks about, and it makes sense. And all these guys are doing it on that level. You got to do it on your level to pass them.
So yes, it's arm care and it's strengthening the arm, but that's not where we end. You got to look into all the other important aspects of the body and how they contribute to the arm. Anything you want to add?
How am I supposed to follow that up?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I would just say I think a lot of the pitchers, like, they don't do anything with the arms and they're afraid to lift overhead and all that stuff, like afraid to get too muscular. Their coaches tell them not to lift overhead, it'll tighten you up and stuff, but then it's just leading to all of these pitchers having really weak shoulders. And I saw that for myself when I started doing, just for example here, when we do the push jerk, like I was terrible at it when I first started, and it just showed me, wow, like my shoulders are a joke how weak they are, and it is just not, it's not going to be stable, it's not going to be strong enough when I start putting heavy loads on my body. And that's what kind of showed me, like, hey, I got to start stepping this up, and I think a lot of pitchers have to.
Yeah, and your off season's a time to try things and challenge your body and slowly and learn it. In season is not a time to do that, and that's what David's saying. You know, you eventually learn, okay, a lot of this overhead pressing not helping me on the mound. I really feel my arms are too worn out. Or he was catching the cleans, and because he hasn't gotten really good at the mobility aspects of it, it was wearing his forearms out. And he said, not really what I want right now in season when my job is to pitch right now. So, you know, we modified and changed, and he took things out. So the point is you don't want to be trying things like trying more overhead presses and building that up in season. That'd be something definitely to only do in the off season until you understand it and your body gets good at it. Your body adapts to it. It's really what it is.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Good question. If you have a question, go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, @Top Velocity, #pitching tip. Ask your question, we answer it on the show, and we'll see you on the next episode.